So we're going to hear from you, Don, obviously, and then we're going to hear from several other practitioners that complement the rest of the affordable housing ecosystem that speak to how is this impacting the day-to-day and how developers are thinking about building affordable housing? How are those projects being financed and what different incentives are available so that developers can make their projects more sustainable and leverage solar and some of the other opportunities that are available to them.
Welcome to Buzz House, a Baker Tilly podcast where you can hear all the buzz around multifamily housing with all the info you need to help you win now and anticipate tomorrow. Hi, I'm Don Bernards, the partner in charge of Baker Tilly's multifamily housing practice.
And I'm Gary Gibson, a partner at Baker Tilly, also specializing in consulting on multifamily housing transactions across the country.
Let's get started. Garrick and I are very excited to have our colleague, Matt Paschal, National Program Director, DevelUP, on the show today, all to talk about the DevelUP 2024 conference. This is the third annual conference in the series and will be hosted April 17th and 18th in Chicago. A lot to get to. Ready to jump right into our discussion with Matt? I'm going to turn over to Garrick. Garrick?
Thanks, Don and Matt. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to have you on to give us some good information on the DevelUP. But before we jump into a discussion about the conference, would you please let our listeners know what your role here is at Baker Tilly as the National Program Manager of DevelUP?
Yes, Garrick and Don, thank you again for having me. Always a pleasure to be on Buzz House. But for the audience, yes, I'm Matt Paschal, and as the National Program Manager of Baker Tilly's DevelUP strategy, my role falls under a combination of business development strategy as well as brand building and community building. So part of my role is really helping us figure out and strategize about how can we be increasingly more thoughtful and intentional with how we bring Baker Tilly's comprehensive expertise across tax, assurance, and real estate and economic development consulting to more minority-owned businesses in the communities that they serve.
All right, thanks for that. You do a great job at that, Matt, for sure. So, Matt, what are the overall goals of the actual conference and who should consider attending?
Absolutely. Over the past 3 years, the target demographic of the conference has evolved. So initially, we were hyper-focused on diverse developers, specifically in community development finance. So those that were focused on building affordable housing in communities across the country. And I think as we look into year 3, where now our goal is to build this economic ecosystem of not only diverse developers, but the project partners and professional service firms that they need to be successful and those that they want to partner with and collaborate with, as well as others from the economic development ecosystem. So we're talking about impact investors, project financiers, contractors, engineers, architects, those in the energy and sustainability space. We really want DevelUP to be a one-stop shop for all the players in the commercial real estate and economic development space who have equity in mind and have a focus on how do we help empower minority-owned businesses in the communities that they serve to thrive.
Thanks for that, Matt. Man, we know the conference itself, switching to the conference itself, a day and a half. What can attendees expect throughout the conference? What's the format? What can they expect?
So the first day is a half day of programming specifically focused on the Inflation Reduction Act and its implications on minority-owned businesses and then the commercial real estate industry overall. So those will be 3 panel discussions where you'll hear from a total of 15 industry practitioners in their various areas of expertise. And then that will be followed by a networking reception. So one of the main things that we're focused on in this DevelUP conference annually is leaving meaningful time for people to network and to relationship build. And then in the second day, we're going to have the day start off with 2 panels that will occur for the entire conference. And then we're going to break out into 3 different panel tracks. The first track is community development finance. The second track is building equitable economic development ecosystems. And third track is sustainability and innovation. And under each of those tracks, we're going to have hour-long panels that will flow throughout the day simultaneously.
Thanks for that overview. Matt, maybe drilling in a little bit to that first afternoon, you talked a lot about those sessions around sustainability, energy, related finance. Maybe just dig a little bit deeper into some of those topics. Obviously, Garrick and I have talked a lot about the Inflation Reduction Act over the last year plus, but digging in a little deeper to what we can expect from that afternoon, those panels.
Absolutely. So we're going to have 3 panels. The first one is going to really talk about an outlook of the affordable housing industry and the impacts of the Inflation Reduction Act on the affordable housing industry. So we're going to hear from you, Don, obviously, and then we're going to hear from several other practitioners that complement the rest of the affordable housing ecosystem that speak to how is this impacting the day-to-day of how developers are thinking about building affordable housing? How are those projects being financed, and what different incentives are available so that developers can make their projects more sustainable and leverage solar and some of the other opportunities that are available to them. The second panel is going to be more broad and focus on investing in the energy economy and what diverse stakeholders need to know. So the purpose of that is to really help MBE, WBE businesses in the audience understand what is the process to being green certified, and that the Inflation Reduction Act is creating a lot of jobs for the MBE and WBE businesses that are prepared to meet the moment, to get certified, to get qualified, and to understand how different state and local governments are thinking about allocating resources to them to build sustainable communities. So that panel is going to go more in depth with what does that look like, and what are the opportunities that exist in Illinois specifically, but then at a national level as well. And then the third panel is going to talk about how are projects in the clean energy economy getting financed. And so we're going to have people from WISTA, we're going to have leadership from the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs, talking about how those organizations are thinking about deploying capital to green energy projects, and then businesses that are looking to build green energy projects as well. So both from the project perspective, but also the business perspective.
Yeah, those sound like great panels. Sounds like an interesting way to dissect the IRA there and all those three different panels and three different perspectives. So let's switch to the morning of the full day on the 18th. The first panel is on the state of the market. You know, it has a bunch of power brokers on there. So let us know about the panelists that are going to be there and what this actual panel will cover.
So with the understanding that the real estate market has been a roller coaster over the past 24 months, part of the main goal is to give a 12 to 18 month outlook from some of the power brokers on the panel, who are developers, who are asset managers, who are seasoned real estate development professionals, to speak to what they're seeing and the conversations that they're having and recommendations that they may have to the audience over to how to think about development opportunities, investment opportunities, building their portfolios and building wealth. But another proponent, or one of the main things we want to make sure that they speak to, is specifically for the diverse developers in the world, helping them understand, how do you think about building your pipeline during a time like this? How do you think about relationship building and networking at a time like this in the market? How do you think about fundraising and capital access during this time? So the goal is to speak to both the future of the market as we currently see it, but also what does the future of the industry look like as we work towards making it more equitable and making it more accessible to diverse developers who still remain a crucial part of our target audience. And so part of it will be about some candid conversations around what are the barriers that MBE, WBE developers and businesses are still facing when it comes to access to capital, and what have some of these practitioners seen work well, or where have they seen progress being made in terms of how lending institutions and investors are thinking about deploying capital to diverse developers.
That sounds like a really great panel. So what about the afternoon? I know we have a schedule that breaks out into specific tracks. So what are these three tracks and some of the highlights of these panels?
So the feedback that we've gotten over the past 2 years is that there's so much information that people want to take away from DevelUP. And so going into this year, this is going to be the first year that we have the number of breakout sessions that we do, but we feel like it's the best way for us to drive the value that our consumers and clientele want us to provide. And so the first track is really going to be focused on all things community development finance. So we're going to be talking about, how do you build housing without low-income housing tax credits, so more workforce housing focus? How do you think about holistic community development as opposed to just building housing? How do you think about job creation? How do you think about economic mobility? We're going to have a panel that's specifically focused on new market tax credits. So demystifying new market tax credits as a diverse developer. How do you access those? How can they be used to complement other projects you may be doing in your community? And how do you quantify impact leveraging those credits? The second track is about building equitable entrepreneurial ecosystems. So we're going to be talking about the other players in the economic development world that are not specifically focused on housing, but that may be focused on helping people transition from renting to home ownership. We're going to be talking about workforce development and job creation and how integral that is into building healthy, thriving communities. And then the third panel is going to really be about sustainability and innovation. And the panel that I'm most looking forward to from that is two. We're going to be talking about supplier diversity and workforce development and the energy economy. So building off the panel on the 17th, really getting into the nitty gritty of how do MBE, WBE businesses differentiate themselves in the energy economy, and how can they grow successful, thriving businesses, leveraging the funding that's coming out from state and local government and best practices for how to do that. We're going to have a panel that speaks to, as an MBE, WBE business, how do you operationalize and scale and build a sustainable business, whether it's professional services, whether it's construction, whether it's real estate development. It's one thing to build a business and to build a pipeline. It's another thing to build a sustainable business, a multi-generational business. And that's what we want for these MBE, WBE businesses that are engaging with us, is to learn best practices as to how to scale and sustain themselves over time. And then the last panel in our sustainability and innovation track that I'm excited about is really talking about truly the future of the industry and how is technology in this world of AI, in this world of automation, how is that shaping how different businesses are going about developing their workforce, innovating some of those tools into their day-to-day to make them more efficient and more effective. And MBE, WBE businesses are often left out of those conversations. Access to that information is not democratized. And so we want to ensure that this panel gives them the best practices to think about and show them these are how businesses that are MBEs at a larger scale are implementing technology into their business across a wide array of use cases. And then you can take what you want from that and figure out how to implement it in your business to make you more effective.
Thanks for that thorough overview of those three tracks. Very excited to kind of see how that all play out. Switching gears, we have some wonderful, wonderful sponsors for the conference. And maybe as of the date of this recording, because we still talk with others, so you able to walk through the sponsors? And I know many of them, or all of them actually, share the views and goals of DevelUP.
Absolutely. First, the tagline for DevelUP is building equitable entrepreneurial ecosystems. And so all the sponsors up until this point share our commitment to supporting minority-owned businesses in the communities that they serve and building a more equitable commercial real estate industry. And so to date, our sponsors include JP Morgan Chase, US Bancorp Impact Finance, Momentous Capital, Chicago Neighborhood Initiatives and Greenwood Archer Capital, Comcast, Forward Community Investments, IFF, BizNow, and the Business Leadership Council and the Diverse Developers Conference. So in their own way, each of those organizations share our values and share our commitment, and whether they're conveners, whether they're facilitators, whether they're capital allocators, they all view Baker Tilly as a worthwhile partner and DevelUP as a worthwhile ecosystem to invest in, both from a business development perspective, but also in just cultivating the future of our industry and of our communities.
Thank you for that, man. And just one last question for you. For attendees, what do you hope that one takeaway? I know there's so much information, there's so many people. What would be like a takeaway for our listeners who are thinking about attending, maybe are attending? What would you hope they take away?
I think a couple of things. The first would be that I want them to view Baker Tilly as a partner for the future in all things that they do. I want them to view us as a company that's invested in the future of them as an individual, but whatever business or endeavors they take on, that we're going to be there to support them and position them for success. I want them to leave with the understanding that this industry is headed in the right direction. I think sometimes you look at the lack of progress in terms of numbers around representation or entrepreneurs that are able to build wealth. And I think what we've created with DevelUP is a platform that affirms that everyone belongs in this industry. And it's imperative that everyone have a seat at the table if we're going to drive the progress that we want. And that DevelUP is that. DevelUP embodies that through and through. And I think lastly, we've talked a lot about this down in Garrick, is the power of relationship building and how opportunities come through intentional relationship building. And I think if there's one thing I want to encourage people to do, it's to talk to that person that you're sitting next to at lunch or at breakfast or at dinner, to walk up to that person during a networking reception, because everyone that's going to be in that room is operating from the same place of wanting to positively impact our industry and change it for the better moving forward. And with that mindset, everyone is committed. Everyone is committed to going back to their organizations and trying to figure out how to drive change. And so to lean into that, being uncomfortable maybe in a networking setting, I know that that's not for everybody, but I think to really be open to that and all the opportunities that can come from that.
Matt, thank you so much for your leadership on this. That's it for this episode of The Buzz House. A big thanks again to our colleague, Matt, for joining us on the show today to cover what you can expect at the DevelUP 2024 conference, again, held in Chicago on April 17th and 18th. Thanks again, Matt, for coming.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Garrick.
Once again, I'm Don Bernards.
And I'm Garrick Gibson. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. For additional resources around multifamily housing, check out bakertilly.com. If you have a suggestion for the show, email us at buildabakertilly.com. That's BUILD at bakertilly.com. See you next time on Buzz House.